Hello, this is Professor Werwath. I want to talk about a topic that is rarely covered in MBA courses or any kind of engineering course that I've been to. And it's really pivotal to the engineering management function, which is trying to understand the capacity of your organization to deliver. So this goes beyond simple headcount and understanding how many people you have. It gets into such things as what is their availability, what are their skills, what are their capabilities. An end-to-end system requires multiple skills. It requires an iterative process that might require defect resolution as well as creating new products from scratch, architecting them from scratch, understanding the complexity that you're able to handle, understanding the timeframes for that you can deliver, and recognizing that the rest of the organization is going to be highly dependent on your ability to deliver on time and on budget with the resources you have. Understanding deficiencies you might have, whether that means an open rec or the need to outsource or the need to bring in third parties. So complementing all of that, I guess, is understanding the complexity of what you're able to take on without overloading your organization, not saying yes to everything that comes by, but understanding that some things you need to say yes to, but you also need to understand what the impact is. So if you can measure the capacity, you can measure the impact it's going to have, any new project might have on your organization. So with that, let's get started. The importance, of course, is we want to allow engineering managers to make informed decisions, right? Identify strengths, weaknesses, potential growth areas in your technological capability to deliver. So do you have the right people? Do you have them in the right locations? Are they working on the right projects? Are they working together in a coordinated fashion? Et cetera, right? Skills inventory. So more than counting noses, right? You have to understand what skills you have in your organization. A manufacturing plant might need people with mechanical skills, electrical skills, chemical skills, right? So we had people in hybrid manufacturing that had deep chemical and process engineering capabilities. What skills you have available and when they are available based on the current loading. So you have to have a very good sense of what projects they're already committed to, what projects are coming up, what other commitments you might have for those folks, whether that's personal time off, vacation time, holiday time, training time, or time to revamp an old product, or work on what we call MOL, maintenance of the line, which in some organizations can be anywhere from 20% on up. MOL to activities are really activities to maintain older products, to keep them functioning in the factory so that you can continue to work on new products in parallel. What blend of skills you might need, right? As well as knowing what levels of skills, from novice to what I would call architect. Architect might be journeyman, or perhaps somebody who's extremely senior. You don't want to have all senior people, right? Because A, they get easily bored. B, they don't want to do trivial work. C, you might have a lot of trivial work that needs to get done, work that is otherwise easily done by a fresh out or somebody who's relatively new. But most importantly, you need a pipeline. You need the ability to grow from within so that tomorrow's retirees or resignations from the senior people can be backfilled from within instead of having to do a huge learning curve by hiring from the outside. So having that pyramid of sorts where you have lower level people who are learning the skills and learning the domain and learning the context and learning the software and the code, so that when they are ready to get to the next level and the next level and the next level, right? Obviously, the size of the group narrows, people resign, people get transferred, people get reassigned to other projects. So managing that pyramid of having the right level of skills as well as the right diversity of skills is really key to the engineering management function, right? So we have things like efficiency metrics, right? How efficient are people? How effectively are they being utilized? What capacity might exist within your own organization? Are they 100%? Is everyone 100% utilized? We can tell ourselves these things But it's more important to measure these things, right? It's important, I guess, to actually have that ability, right? Conversely, innovation and indicators highlight the rate of new, I guess, new technology adoption. How fast are you adopting new technologies? Do you have the skills set aside for that? Do you have people trained in AI, for example, or machine learning or large language models, right? And if not, is that something you want to grow from within or hire from outside, right? Those are the questions that you have to answer as you innovate and move into new spaces. That's constantly the challenge with the engineering manager is what technologies do you invest in indigenously and which ones do you outsource? So capacity assessment methods, I mean, you can do surveys, you can do benchmarking, you can do capacity modeling, you can do SWOT analysis, and you can do expert interviews, right? These are the techniques that you can use. I've used all of them, but I've also done one more, which is really more of a database approach where I have people filling out various aspects of a relational complex database. So understanding where everybody is assigned for the next, say, 12, 18, 24 months, always looking into the future, always name by name, resource by resource, skill by skill, task by task, project by project. Mapping all of those things together in a single unified database is what has been most successful for me. Most of these other surveys, benchmarking are snapshots, one time only, when what you need is a continuous process. Well, that's where capacity modeling comes in handy, right? These other techniques, SWOT and expert in interviews, can be done, but again, they're snapshots in time. And your challenge is to have an evergreen process, an always updated, refreshed process, so that at any point in time, your senior leadership can go to you and say, if I had to lay off 10% of your resources, what projects would be impacted? You should be able to tell them very quickly what the impact analysis is, right? Conversely, if you had 10% more budget allocated to you, what projects could you take on? What projects can you accelerate? What projects would then be bolstered in terms of maybe added scope so that you can maybe do phase 2 and phase 1 in a combined fashion? So those are the methods, right? The tools and technologies. There's data analysis software, there's project management tools, there's simulation software. You can use something as simple as an Access database or even an Excel spreadsheet in smaller organizations. I doubt seriously that many of the PM tools outside of maybe the enterprise software tools in project management would come in handy. Data analysis like Python and R will come in handy if you're trying to understand productivity and trends and trying to forecast the future, right? In terms of, okay, what's tomorrow's productivity based on the last 3 or 4 years of productivity? What kind of gains can you achieve just through normal learning curve phenomenon versus actually bringing in new tools and new techniques to make your team more effective? Again, the engineering manager is expected to maximize the effectiveness of their engineering team. Analyzing capacity data, right? So what resources you have available, which ones are not available, where you have deficiencies. I mean, I did this study with a former employer, and we found that of the 2 or 3 dozen locations, we had certain skill sets in certain locations that were woefully deficient, and we had to go on a hiring campaign. So, if you got 10 more recs for new openings that you could hire against, where would they go? This is not arbitrary. This should not be based on who screams the loudest. This should be based on, capacity data that you can point to and say, I have openings and needs here, here, and here in order to achieve our roadmap or to achieve the next generation of roadmaps, right? Managing capacity issues requires proactive management, right? So upskilling your staff, optimizing resource allocation, adopting new technologies. This is an ongoing process that you need to follow, right? Case studies, right? 2 companies, right, using this technique and capacity modeling for 2 very different reasons. One, company A trying to scale their operations by using technology, right, and effective measurement, allowing for better forecasting and reduced downtime. So for them, it's a scaling issue. For company B, it's being able to recover through innovation, right? So surging past competitors, leveraging new technology, showcasing how capacity can help you, if you have the resources, if you have the budget, to break into new technological advantages and give yourself a market advantage in the field. So 2 observations about what I see in the popular press, right? The first one, of course, is work from home. And this is 2025, very early 2025, where I'm making the statement, and I literally saw Peter Thiel make this statement not more than 2 weeks ago, right? And his statement was in bold, we all know that work from home doesn't work. This is an observation from Silicon Valley. I don't know if this is universally believed or if this is just a Peter Thiel thing. But frankly, it's a convenient thing to say during layoff season, because you can simply tell people, show up to work in person, or your job is terminated, right? In essence, it's the ultimate way to get people to lay themselves off, right? Perhaps even avoiding the termination liabilities that normally go with a layoff, right? So that would be any kind of severance package or any kind of unemployment insurance, right? There are many companies successfully managing work from home. And I guess I would have to ask you, is the implication that people only work when their boss can see them physically working, right? How many times as a boss are you able to physically see your people working, especially in a knowledge or information setting, right? If they're typing on the computer, is that working, right? Would you look at the repository of code and say, okay, they deposited a lot of code. Is that working? Is that effective, right? Ultimately, you need a better measure of effectiveness than simply keystrokes per hour or time in chair, right? These are very primitive forms of managing a resource, especially a technical resource, right? You have to set quantifiable goals and effective measurements for you to assess whether you're physically in the same room or not, right? How about teams that are physically separate from each other? In the last 25 years, it is rare, if maybe ever, in the last 25 years of my career, that all of my team has been physically located even in the same zip code, let alone the same building or the same room. How am I supposed, or how's any manager supposed to physically observe whether they're in the office or not, whether they're typing fast enough or not? These are ridiculous statements that make no sense at all, right? If you need synergies that come from bringing people together, I get it, right? But necessarily working from the office doesn't, in and of itself, does not achieve that, right? You need team building, you need collaboration techniques, you need to have regular meetings. The same people who complain about work from home not working are the same people that are saying that meetings are useless, right? The fewer meetings, the better. The best meeting is no meeting, right? When in fact, meetings are needed, whether you work in the same building or not, whether you work from home or not, right? Meetings are needed to get everybody on the same page, understand what the critical path is, and work those critical path issues, right? How does outsourcing work when your team is 6,000 miles away? You better have a good mechanism for measuring output, measuring the effectiveness of that output and the quality of that output, so that you're not reinforcing people for keystrokes. Elon Musk, I guess the partner, if you will, of Peter Thiel, is also known for pushing his people to work absurdly long hours. Well beyond 40 hours, we're talking 50, 60, 70, or maybe 80 hours a week or more, right? On a continuous basis, this is harmful to not just the psyche, but also the physical well-being of your employees, right? You are pushing them beyond their limits. Earnest belief that working long hours is a competitive advantage is flawed, right? You need time away from work to be able to look at work objectively and to bring a fresh pair of eyes to your work, ideally every week, right? Which is why we invented the weekend, to get away from work so that you come back Monday morning, perhaps with some new ideas, some new approaches, maybe a smarter way to work instead of a harder way to work, right? The truth is long hours leads to poor productivity and poor quality. I think we all know that, right? Which is why truck drivers are not allowed to drive, beyond a certain amount of time per day. Airline pilots must be benched after a certain number of hours in the air. The same with flight crews of all forms, right? This is for real good reasons. This is not arbitrary, right? This is because, frankly, there is a law of diminishing returns, right? You don't want to reward time on task versus true effectiveness, right? I can spend 10 hours working on a piece of code, and my counterpart could spend an hour and get more done. Maybe I'm a terrible coder. Maybe I'm not very focused. Maybe I'm working on too many projects, right? Maybe that other person, my counterpart, is a genius and can write code in 1/5 the time or 1/10 the time. Understanding this, right, and managing these are your challenges as the engineering manager, right? Not everyone's a genius. Not everyone should be a genius. We all have geniuses in different directions and in different ways. Your job is to apply the variety of genius capabilities in your organization to achieve genius results, okay? More code isn't always better code, right? Therefore, more time writing code isn't always the best use of time, right? Productivity versus hours worked. This is a study that was done in terms of GDP per hour worked, different countries in the OECD from 1990 through 2012. And they actually looked at, the economists looked at the amount of hours spent on the y-axis, I'm sorry, on the x-axis, right, per person, and then the GDP per hour worked, which is a form of efficiency or productivity, right? And obviously your productivity goes down because you're spending more and more time to deliver less and less incrementally. That's the law of diminishing returns, right? That's the issue. So you have to find that proper optimal ratio of, okay, is it 40 hours? Is it 45? Is it 48? Whatever that number is, right? Once upon a time, back in the day, right, the question your manager would ask you is, if you're working overtime, why can't you get your job done in normal time? What is stopping you? What is blocking you? Is it a lack of training, lack of tools, lack of clarity, right? Is it lack of familiarity? What is it? What can we do to help you so that you can get your job done, not in 70 hours a week, but in 40 or 45 hours a week in a reasonable amount of time? And with that, I will end the lecture, and hopefully this was valuable to you. But the engineering manager has a true challenge on their hands, both internally within the team and externally with upper management, to fulfill this assessment of capacity, technological capacity, the ability to deliver, upon which the entire organization may very well rest. If you can get 3 products done in a year versus 2, the impact across the board, across the organization, might be significant. So with that, I will let you ponder all of this. And if you have any questions, send me an email. Take care.